Hi, guys. Hope you're doing well today. It's Fred and Sheila with Hatfield McCoy Museum Adventures and FS Investigates.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. If you've seen the first part, we're going over a gentleman's video. Gentleman is a very well spoken, very informative. I wish he had the correct information, which he has a lot of correct information. That's why we're not going over the things he's correct on. We don't fool with. We don't correct because there's no need. He's already got it right. And some of those things, as we go through, we may make mention of them. But on the first video we did, we were supposed to go over the people in the background here because some of you may not be familiar with Sheila and I or our channel. We started this channel way back, correcting Hatfield and McCoy history. In fact, on this channel, there's over 500 videos on the Hatfields and McCoy history before we started on news articles and troopers that's been killed and different things that we veered off on other topics. But our initial channel was for Hatfield McCoy history.
Correcting something in wrong.
Correcting it. Yeah. And Sheila and I do that through records, documents, Civil War records, birth certificates, death certificates. We use physical evidence as much as we can, as many times as we can, to prove, rather than just speaking something in the history. There's so many people out there over the years that's written books or just said something or Facebook pages and wrote it in the history or spoke it in the history. That doesn't make it true. In the background here, over here is Preacher Ants and Polly Hatfield. Way up there. I can't see it here.
There?
Yeah, thank you, babe. That's Preacher Ants and Polly Hatfield. Preacher Ants Hatfield was the cousin to Devil Ants Hatfield. They were first cousins.
Yeah, you had a preacher, you had a devil.
Yeah. And that's why they nicknamed them, just like Good Elias and Bad Elias and so forth. People back then, a lot of them had the same name, so that's how they would tell them apart. Creek Allen, River Allen, Uncle Wall, River Wall, Aunt Betty, and Allen's Betty. There was different names for different people, but in the background on the other side behind my head here, that's actually Aunt Betty. That's Aunt Betty McCoy. Uriah is down below me there. It's a picture of him. Uriah and Aunt Betty McCoy was my great-great-grandparents. Their son, Asa McCoy, married Nancy Hatfield, the daughter of Preacher Ants and Polly Hatfield. Preacher Ants and Polly Hatfield was my great-great-parents, great-great-grandparents on the other side. So I'm half Hatfield and half McCoy. Now, Preacher Ants is the one that presided, presumably, over the 1878 pig trial. There's no record of it. Absolutely nothing except stories that's been told from the past. There's no documentation, no record. We do have documentation of a pig trial. We'll discuss it later on. I think this gentleman brings it up. So whatever these people bring up, and it's not just him, we've been slacking because there's been several articles people have sent us over the last few days, different videos that's been made, and it's time to start calling them out. It's time to correct. If we can correct them with proof, it's time to do it. And that's the only way we're ever going to get the history. And I don't think we're ever going to get it because even though we've put the history out there before, they keep right on these Facebook pages and saying the same old stuff that's been said for years and knowing it's not true, but it's good for entertainment purposes. Sheila's going to start this fella's video. And again, this is well, down here below, I can see it in my chair between Sheila. This is my grandma and grandpa right there. That's Philip McCoy and Ella Jane McCoy. And Philip was the son of Nancy and
Asa
McCoy. I was trying to think of the Philip was born out behind. They had a little cabin out behind Preacher Ants Hatfield's cabin, and that's where Asa and Nancy lived at when they got married. They got married in 1875. The famous pig trial, the one that Preacher Ants presided over, was 1878, 3 years later. Sometimes people want to make it that all the Hatfields and all the McCoys hated each other and everybody was into it. That's not true. Simply not true. But let's let this gentleman talk. And if he brings up something that we need to correct, we will.
Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can get this right.
In century, few people hated each other more than these two clans. Why? Some say it was over a land dispute, others due to their opposing allegiances during the Civil War. Some say it was even because of a stolen pig. Yeah, a pig. Whatever the reason, the Hatfields and McCoys engaged in a legendary bloody feud that lasted for decades and left dozens of kinsmen on both sides either dead or in prison. To begin our tale, we must travel to a remote area of the Appalachian Mountains known as the Tug Valley.
Guys, what we're going to do is, he brought up several different topics here. He brought up the Hatfields and McCoys hated each other, possible over the land dispute, and he talks about the land dispute more later. And the feud went on for decades, and dozens were killed.
Imprisoned.
Or imprisoned. May have even started over a pig. Now, we're going to go downstairs, and we're going to go over some different boards and pictures and newspaper articles, different things that we've got, contrary to what was just said. And that may help you understand with proof of how stories have got started throughout the years.
Where Hatfield owned several successful tanneries. From that point on, it's a similar tale to the McCoys. Matthias and Maria had a bunch of children who had a bunch of children who then had a bunch of children, and some of them probably married their cousins.
Rumor, Scout, Cassidy, Zoe, Ian, Lauren, Cubert.
It was actually George Hatfield, Matthias's great-grandson.
Yeah, they actually did. Guys, you got to understand, we all come from Adam and Eve, but back in the old days, the pickings was scarce. Your neighbors within a 5, 10, 15-mile range is probably as far as you're going to get out of your area to go courting, because you had to do it on horseback. So there was a lot of marrying of cousins. In fact, Cap Hatfield married his cousin. Ellison Hatfield and Harriet Hatfield were first cousins. They're the parents of Cotton Top Hatfield, Ellison Hatfield. Some like to refer to him as a Mounts, but he's not a Mounts. But so, yeah, it did go on. There's several that we could name here. He's done named one on the other side, which was Randall and Sarah. Sarah was the sister to Uriah McCoy. Uriah McCoy was my great-great-grandfather, so I mean Sarah was my great-great-aunt. Randall would have been my great-great-uncle.
Right.
So we can go on now, but that did occur a lot back in the old days. You know, back over the years when we used to have the family had the museum over at Renfro Valley on 75, we'd have people come through from Texas or Ohio or somewhere, and a lot of them would laugh, and they'd say they all married their cousins back then. They was inbreds and all this and that. Well, you know, the funny thing is, over the years, and we've got it on the door downstairs. In fact, we'll show you, or you can Google it. Google what states in the United States is it illegal to marry your first cousin in, and you're going to be surprised at the states that it's actually still legal to marry your first cousin. Not Kentucky, not West Virginia, not Tennessee, not Arkansas, the places that people make fun of. But California, New York, places like that, it's still legal there to marry your cousins. And that we would show that to people, and it would astonish them, because here they was making fun of Eastern Kentucky or another state, and nowadays it's illegal to do that. But in other states, it's still legal for them to marry their cousins.
Wow.
There is no certain beginning to this famous feud, although it probably wasn't the pig, as amusing as that might be. The source of the animosity that most historians subscribe to seems to be the Civil War. Both families were affected by the conflict and both had members who served in it. The Hatfields fought for the Confederacy, while the McCoys, also fought for the Confederacy.
There you go.
Okay.
So wait, why did they argue over it then? Well, there might be two reasons.
Why did they argue over it? Because Devil Anse had deserted.
Mhm.
In the heat of battle, Devil Anse wouldn't have been so bad had he just deserted. He was not that valuable of a soldier by himself. But when Devil Anse deserted, he went around to everybody and asked them to go with him. Let's leave. Let's go home. Randall McCoy, Uriah McCoy, they didn't go, along with a bunch of other men. But there was a bunch that went with Devil Anse, some of his kinfolk and just some of his friends, and then just some people that just said, hey, I'm out of here too. All it took was somebody to bring it up and say, hey, let's desert. They didn't call it desert. Let's go home. Let's go home. And they went home. And when that bunch of men left out of that unit, a unit that was already small, the rest of them in that unit was either killed
Mhm.
or
Captured.
And that was the beginning of the hard feelings. I don't know what's so hard about people to understand this, because how would you feel if that happened to you? You're in a war and you're counting on somebody to back you up, and everybody, all of us together can probably win this battle.
You work together.
But if we work together, but all of a sudden you look and you see 15, 16, 18 men hightailing it out of there. Now you're really shorthanded. And now what's not killed is taken prisoner. So the hard feelings started with the Civil War. Devil Anse and Randall both fought for the Confederacy. And we're going to discuss the Union side here in a minute. But that was the hard feelings when Devil Anse left, and Randall and Uriah was taken prisoner of war for the next 2 years and stayed in Camp Douglas. First, they went to Ohio. I forget the name of that camp. But Camp Douglas, Illinois is where they ended up at and spent the next 2 years in prisoner of war camp in Illinois.
If you want, I could add those papers at the end of it.
Well, we'll probably, when we get to the museum, we'll just walk by and it will tell us the first camp that they were transferred to, and then they were transferred from there to Camp Douglas, Illinois. Mm-hmm. But that was the hard feelings. That's what started the hard feelings of the feud. Didn't start the feud. Definitely started the hard feelings between Randall McCoy and the way he felt about Devil Anse. Because while Devil Anse come home and robbed and stole and become the Jesse James of that area, you know, back during the Civil War, people would use the color of war to say, hey, well, we have to take this or we have to take that. They would take whatever they wanted from anybody and act like it was they come home and said it was with the home guard. He had to save face. Nobody at home knew that they were deserters. They didn't come home and say, yeah, we left, we deserted. They come home and said, we're here to protect the home front. The home front, the war was moving toward the south. The war was moving the opposite. Yeah. He didn't want to leave. He didn't want to go away from home. He was homesick. He was afraid. He was a coward. Go ahead.
All righty.
First, Devil Anse Hatfield deserted the Confederate Army in February 1863 after feeling that the war was lost. He returned home, and besides taking part in some guerrilla warfare, spent the rest of the war years taking care of his family. Meanwhile, old Randall McCoy was captured by Union forces in July 1863 and spent those same years in captivity, mainly at the Camp Douglas POW camp in Chicago. When the war was over and McCoy returned home, he found his family poor and starving, whereas the Hatfields were prosperous and well-fed, all because Anse had a 2.5-year head start on him to develop his timber business. So yeah.
He's incorrect there. He's correct about Anse doing well and his family eating good, and Randall's family starving to death. That's true. because while Randall was at the prisoner of war camp, Devil Anse was back home stealing. Him and the Tug Valley Desperados, the Logan Wildcats that he stole the name from a recognized unit,
A legit unit.
a legit unit. He stole that name and said they were with the Logan Wildcats. They wasn't with the Logan Wildcats. They were desperados who stole and took anything they wanted. It's not hard to become wealthy or well off when you steal it from somebody else. It's not hard at all. And what they were doing was stealing and prospering while everybody else was fighting in war or sitting in prisoner of war camp.
You can understand why McCoy might have felt a bit cheated that his family suffered because he chose to stand and fight, while Hatfield had been rewarded for his desertion. The other possible reason for the bad blood was Asa Harmon McCoy, the brother of old Raynell, who was the only one to fight on the side of the Union Army. This kind of brother versus...
Over here, Sheila, the board's down through there somewhere. This gentleman makes mention that that one right there, I believe it is. Yeah. The gentleman makes mention that Asa Harmon, nobody liked him because he served for the Union. Randall McCoy had several brothers. He had John, Samuel. Over here's one, Thomas Farmer McCoy. Now, he fought for the Confederacy there, but here's a Confederate. James McCoy was Confederate. Samuel McCoy was Confederate, but John up here, John was with the Union, the 39th. John McCoy was, and that's the same unit that was with Preacher Ants Hatfield. And there's their, Sheila will post this, but these are Civil War records, guys. These are things that nobody knew back during the war, that these guys were going to be famous one day for fighting a feud. Now, Sheila, there was something over here that we were going to talk about.
Was it Devil Anse's papers?
Where he was a private.
Randall McCoy,
where he deserted, February of '63. The gentleman said that. He was only 5'6". We've done videos on top of videos. On top of videos. Where he went to in July. They were captured in July. Camp Douglas, Illinois is right there. Prisoner of war. But now, where was they taken to first? It was in Ohio. And we may have to look through the book. There's Louisa, Kentucky, where they signed the Emancipation.
I'm going to have to go find that again because I don't see that over here on the...
We've got it. But when Randall McCoy was first taken prisoner, he was Camp Chase. Camp Chase, Ohio, is where he was taken.
Good job.
When we go downstairs, somewhere in here, she will insert, did you hear what he said? The only one who fight with the Union Army. That's not true. Had brothers on the Confederate as well as the Union side. Asa Harmon, contrary to what Altina Waller and people that didn't do any research say, there was other brothers of Randall McCoy's who fought for the Union. It wasn't only Asa Harmon. And we'll show you that through Civil War records.
Brother scenario wasn't that unusual during the Civil War. Hell, Iced Earth made a song about it, which you should listen to because it rocks, especially in border states such as Kentucky. However, since most of the Tug Valley was firmly on the Confederacy's side, it didn't make him many friends back home. In fact, he was warned not to return, but return he did, and one day he was attacked by the guerrilla unit that Devil...
See, guys, how they can talk things into history because he was warned not to return to Kentucky because he fought for the Union. Guess who else fought for the Union? It's over top of Sheila's head there. Preacher Ants Hatfield fought for the 39th. He was also in the Union. Devil Ants fought for Confederacy. Preacher Ants fought for the Union. Uriah McCoy, my other great-great-grandfather, fought for the Confederacy. So I had one on the Confederacy and one on the Union. So when this guy says that he was warned not to return home, there was that Asa Harmon was not the only one in that area who fought for the Union. That's just simply not true.
Mhm.
Go ahead. And we'll show you with documentation.
Ants had been a part of. The Union soldier made a run for it and hid out in a cave for a while, but the bushwhackers tracked him down and murdered him on January 7th, 1865. Devil Anse was initially pegged as the killer of Asa McCoy, although it was later determined that he was at home when the shooting began. Even so, some historians think that the real...
We will show you in... There's only 2 books that was written about the feud, during the it was Sam McCoy's manuscript, and T.C. Crawford. Sam McCoy says that he went to his aunt Patty the next day after Uncle Harmon was killed. And I'll show you in the book. And this is from his memoirs.
Yeah.
This is his words. This was from then, not what people wrote about throughout the years, or a descendant or a descendant or of a descendant. Sam McCoy says that Patty told him that when he asked her what happened, and she said that Ance Hatfield and Jim Vance, not Crazy Jim, not Bad Jim, not Devil Ance, but Ance Hatfield and Jim Vance had come calling for Harmon, along with a bunch of men from Virginia side. So, contrary to what people have said over the years from Coleman Hatfield's books and various people's books that said, oh, Ance wasn't there. Ance didn't have nothing to do with killing Asa Harmon. He was homesick. He was not homesick. He was there. He took part in killing Asa Harmon McCoy, who was actually hiding in a cave because he had been injured and shot. And he didn't want to stay at home in the cabin because he knew that they would come calling.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to endanger his family and have them. Ance was known for burning people's cabins down, and he didn't want his home to be burnt down with his family in there. So he went and stayed in a cave.
His wife was pregnant at that time with Nancy.
Exactly.
So he didn't want to risk her getting harmed.
Exactly. And she had taken his breakfast. You know, throughout the years, a person's always heard that Pete had their slave. They had a slave, and Pete had taken his breakfast to him in the cave, and they had followed his footprints. According to Sam McCoy, which you have to believe because he was there,
right?
Sam McCoy says that Martha had actually taken Asa's breakfast to him, and that's how Devil Ance and Jim and the rest of them followed her footprints. Tracked her through the snow.
To where he was at.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that led to his murder.
Yeah. Agree.
Gunman, possibly a man named Wheeler Wilson, was an acquaintance of the Hatfields and was acting under their orders. Specifically,
Wheeler Wilson researched the feud for 60 years. 60 years researching the feud. Wheeler Wilson. Never heard that name. Never. Spoken into history. No such person in any court document, in any newspaper, in any family story, in anything throughout life has there ever been a mention of a Wheeler Wilson. And that's where these things come from. And if I'm wrong, please prove us wrong so we can correct ourselves. There was nobody that's ever been named that was in that Tug Valley Desperados that killed Asa. Has that name ever come up? May be minute to some of you, but when you're talking about history, it means a lot. Because sometimes people tries to throw these names in there. I don't know. Didn't happen. No more than that last video that we did. And they showed a family up there that nobody ever recognizes and says, this is McCoy's. This is just a family out of the blue that's never been mentioned in the feud, during the feud, or in that area. And all of a sudden they introduce a picture on this video of who they say are McCoy's. That's so other people that have introduced that picture can say, yeah, this is my family. If you'll go watch this video, they got a family portrait of my relatives. And that just means that there's a family portrait that was put on a bogus video But by it being on that video, it give it some credibility for people to say, yeah, that's my family. They were involved in a feud. It's not right. Go ahead.
Under the orders of Ance's uncle, Jim Vance. The other McCoys might not have been too fond of Asa at the time, but they probably didn't want him dead, so it's understandable that many consider this the beginning of the feud. However, going by their actions,
Has any of you ever had falling outs with your family? Is some of you Democrats and brothers or sisters or somebody Republicans? Have you ever had differences? Of course. Do you hate your sibling? That was the other thing that set Randall McCoy backward. When he left prisoner of war and he returned home, not only was he taken prisoner of war and lost 2.5 years of his life and his family mistreated, his tools, his livestock, his food, everything stolen, he comes home to find out that Devil Anse Hatfield and Jim Vance and others, some which had served in the unit with him, had actually murdered his brother. Would that cause hard feelings? Didn't start the feud, but it was another element that added something that contributed to the feud or the starting of the feud. Hard feelings.
Yep.
Correct me, babe, or talk
No,
anytime
I
you want.
agree. I agree with you.
Asa McCoy's death did not seem to bother them that much. There was no immediate retaliation.
Why? Where would they get that from? Where would this gentleman get that from? Seems like a nice enough fella. Like I said, he's well spoken. Why would he say that? Where did he get that information? Because that is my family. We've never grown up. We never heard the first thing about. They didn't care about Asa Harmon being killed. Nobody cared because their brother was murdered. That came from Altina Waller. See, Altina Waller wrote a book, and she said she's the one that says Hatfield's is from West Virginia, McCoy's is from Kentucky. She says that Randall McCoy never served in the war on either side. But yet, we've got Civil War records.
One thing we was going to talk about, and here's a board on her, speaking of her, because we've done about 4 or 5 videos on Altina Waller. On everything from saying there wasn't a feud to saying that Randall McCoy never served. Look here, there's Uriah McCoy. There's Randall McCoy that actually served. That's his Civil War records. But yet, she didn't take the time to go research and find that out. She simply wrote a book called The Feud, just like the one I showed you yesterday, pretty much.
Where Randall McCoy did serve. Where Randall McCoy was a POW. But this is books that people read of other people like that, and then they quote them, and somebody else watches this man's video, and they say, oh, okay. So they didn't even care. Because she laughs. She's actually on the History Channel on a interview, a documentary, and she says, yeah, they didn't care about Asa Harmon being killed because he was Union. Really? Wow. What a comment. Go ahead.
Neither legal nor extrajudicial. In fact, we don't know of any other serious altercations between the two families for the rest of the decade. It wasn't until 1872 that the Hatfields and McCoys found themselves on opposing sides, this time in a court case over illegal logging. The defendant was Perry Klein, a member of the extended McCoy family.
Now, we've done videos on top of videos. We have researched. We've looked at microfilm. We've been to Logan County, Wyoming County, Mingo County, Pike County. We've been everywhere looking for any kind of court records or documents, Frankfurt, of a lawsuit whatsoever. Dylan, 1872 is when he says that this lawsuit took place. Now, you're going to hear him in a minute contradict himself because he says there was a lawsuit. In a minute, he said, well, there wasn't a lawsuit. And then he goes back and says later on, well, there was a settlement.
They settled out of court or something, he called it.
So let's see where it goes to from here. But there's never been a lawsuit where Perry Klein sued Devil Anse Hatfield or Devil Anse Hatfield sued Perry Klein. There's never been a lawsuit where Randall McCoy has sued Devil Anse where Randall McCoy's father, Daniel McCoy, sued Devil Anse, or Devil Anse sued them. Randall McCoy and Daniel McCoy was never in the timber business. Perry Klein was the youngest ever elected sheriff in Pike County, became a lawyer, a representative. He was not into the timber business. When would he have had time to be in the timber business? That's not so. Go ahead.
Whose sister Patty also happened to be the widow of Asa McCoy. He owned land adjacent to Hatfield property, and Anse had accused him of cutting down trees from his side of the woods. Why exactly he would do that remains a mystery since...
Well, you're exactly right. That's a mystery, but that was first written in the history with some of the Hatfield kinfolk. You got to remember, guys, the McCoys never started writing books till 100 years later. The McCoys never started telling any stories till years and years and years later. By then, the Hatfields, between Devil Anse talking to T.C. Crawford, and T.C. Crawford wrote it like he's seen it. Now, that book, you got to understand, that book has been outdated now. That book, the copyright on that book is no more. It's open domain or whatever it is. And now Keith Davis has rewrote it. Jack Hatfield's rewrote it. People can say whatever they want and write anything they want. That doesn't mean it's in what T.C. Crawford wrote in the original book. There was no lawsuit. There was no timber war. It was written into history by the Hatfield authors of the early days to give some kind of an excuse for Devil Anse to have murdered and burnt people's cabins and done some of the things that he done, to make him out to not be such a villain as he was. Go ahead.
He owned a whopping 5,000 acres of land, but Hatfield seemed confident that he would win the suit since he borrowed a lot of money to give bond to pursue the case. It took 5 years, but the case was...
Bond for the case. Where is that? Where is that paper? We've got Civil War records from 1861. We've got a pig trial from 1867. We've got records from way, way back. This gentleman now says that there was even bond papers that was signed. He had to borrow money to get bond papers. A while ago, he said he's well off from his timber business. But now he's borrowing money for this court case, and we still haven't got to that part yet. But here in a second, he's going to say, well, they settled. There was no court case. Go ahead and let's just...
eventually settled out of court. This means that the details on the matter are scarce. But Perry...
they're scarce because it was settled out of court. Now, they filed a suit. It was in court.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't
Borrowed
say
money.
the case, huh?
Borrowed money to
Bond.
yeah.
He doesn't say the case was dismissed. The case was set. What do you mean settled out of court? That was the whole purpose of a bond and filing a lawsuit. The reason they now say it was settled out of court because we've got a list of about 30 things Sheila and I do over the years that has never been produced, never will be produced because they don't exist. And this was one of them. But there's no such thing as a lawsuit or where it had to be taken place. Now, of course, they've settled out of court. See how people can word things throughout life, and that's called spoken in the history. Now, to this gentleman here, I'm sure I don't know this guy, and I'm sure it don't mean that much to him because he's making content for a video, and the Hatfields and McCoys is a great topic to talk on. So he's wanting content. He really doesn't care who this is about or not about or how much of it is true. He says, well, there's not a lot to go on. There's this, there's that, leaves it open. But to a historian or somebody that's really researching the feud, they're thinking, wow, I didn't know that. That's great. And you don't know it. It's spoken in the history.
Klein was forced to hand over the deed to his entire property. Just like that, Klein's fortune had dissipated and Devil Anse Hatfield and become one of the richest landowners in the county. Although it has never been substantiated, there have been rumors that Hatfield and his rich backers used their influence to obtain a ruling in their favor. For the time being, a defeated Klein left Tuck.
See, guys, even though no proof of it, it was rumored that Devil Anse had his friends rule in his favor. Rule on what? Because remember, there was a settlement.
Mm-hmm.
The court case was over. That never existed, but this man has went back. It's not his fault.
No,
he's
no,
probably
no.
he's probably reading Altina Waller or somebody's book that's incorrect. But look how wishy-washy. 1 minute there's a court case. 1 minute he's getting bombed. 1 minute there's no court case. They settled out of court. Now he's gone back to say maybe that's why he got a judgment in court, because Devil Anse knew all these rich people. It's not true. You can talk about it all day, but this stuff that you're listening to is garbage.
Valley to start a new life somewhere else, but he found a successful career as a lawyer and would get his revenge on the Hatfields later.
So, guys, Sheila and I are out of the museum. The family, since Mother has passed away, the family has decided to sell the museum. If you've ever wanted to own any authentic Hatfield and McCoy memorabilia, collectibles, artifacts, they're here. And you can contact us. We can put you in contact with other family members, or we can tell you what the word is. That's and there's the books. I've got to bring that book back over that we got out yesterday. But
Yeah, I gotta get Sam's.
other than that, Sheila, on this video, we're going to do one more video after this one.
Okay.
But that will finish this video here. There was no land dispute of 1872. There was no, don't forget about the year. There was no land dispute whatsoever concerning Devil Anse, Perry Klein, or anything like that. There's a 40-year law enforcement career. Guys, we're going to call it.
All right. Thanks for watching today, guys. We hope you're doing well. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye. God bless.
Thanks, guys.